Okay, now we should be recording here. The Coming Cosmic Shift Part 2. So I do apologize, it's taken a long time to get the second part of this up. I don't have my spooky dooky background going on. I just have my home background happening here, which is great. And that brings us into what part 2 is all about. It's about background frequency. Background frequency. So what is it that we mean when we talk about background frequency? You know, if you listen to any of the Hindu music or the music from India, you'll hear something sitting in the background. It's called a drone. A drone. Okay. Now it'll be one note just going wow the whole way through. And then they'll have all these embellishments on other strings playing over the top. But the whole time there's this, it's a drone note and it carries the whole tune. Okay. The music sounds the way it does because of that bass note, that drone going all the way through. Now, the interesting thing is if you look at the written language of Sanskrit, you'll notice there's a line all the way through that too. And all the characters seem to come off underneath the line. That's again like a drone, like with their music. It's a constant, it's there all the way through, what we could call that golden thread holding it all together. It's that single note. And what I'm talking about here, this background frequency. What is it about background frequencies? Well, again, like a drone, which can give you that it sets the tone for all the other embellishments, all the colorings, all the nuances that go over the top of that. But that drone note is very, very important. And we have a background frequency energy field that basically the morphogenic field has a tone that it's set to and has been set to for just a little over 400 years. That background frequency or that tone that I'm talking about is known in human design as the cross of planning. The cross of planning. And so as we go into this part, the first part of the coming cosmic shift, I talked about how we are so connected to the environment. The environment is us. We are the environment, and the environment is us. There's no separation, really. The any idea of separation, which is how we experience this life, is illusory. Nonetheless, it is our experience. As we look at the shifts that are evidently taking place for all of us, we're all either experiencing going through the rinse cycle, or we're having to deal with some ancestral stuff. But no matter what, we're either dealing with things on a very deep emotional level, or on a cognitive level that we've never delved into before. Many, many people, as they say, what is it, doing the shadow work. And it's a wonderful thing to watch because there is a shift in the energy around us. And I think that's evident for all of us. And what we're feeling is this shift and change in the background frequency. Each one of us, according to the knowledge of human design, are born with an incarnation cross. This incarnation cross is through specific gates that are activated, creating a binary. These activations in the mandala wheel, creating these joining channels that actually cross each other, and so these four gates and two on the horizontal and two on the vertical, the higher and the lower, the left and the right, left and the right joined, the higher and the lower are connected like a channel, and they're crossing. That's what we call the incarnation cross. This is a snapshot of the nodes and the sun and earth at the time of your birth. Okay, and to be honest, there's actually two sets of that because we are a binary consciousness, but I won't go into that right now. Um, what we want to talk about is this 2027 shift, which is the return of Pluto. What Pluto brings is a change in the background frequency because Pluto is returning back to the gate 41 in human design. Gate 41 is the starting codon. of our DNA, right? And so Pluto is coming into that starting codon, which corresponds to the gate 41 in the human body graph. And that starting codon is, it sets the tone or the drone or the energy for the whole rest of the next stage of evolution. Okay, because what does Pluto bring? Well, Pluto is about death and rebirth. When Pluto comes back to the position it was in at a specific time, once it comes back to that position of its 250 odd year cycle, when it comes back to that placement that's in line with our DNA, that first codon in our DNA sequence, then what Pluto does is it turns something off and it turns something on. And what we're going to experience it as is a change in the background frequency. Not only that, but there will be mutations taking place in our DNA, causing the emergence of a new being. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, I know this is a lot to take on board, right? It's very, very interesting information, and how can we be sure that it's true? Well, I'm certainly not saying believe what I'm saying. Don't believe what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Don't believe anything. Find out for yourself and know. You see that this knowledge that I'm talking about, it comes from human design, and human design on its very fundamental level, in which it is the science of differentiation and understanding your specific human design through your body graph, which is derived from the human design mandala, consisting of the I Ching and Western astrology and the Kabbalah and these different sacred knowledges, ancient knowledges, merged together, a synthesis of information that gives us very, very precise information according to us. So when you get a reading done, when you have your human design explained to you, or when you have human design explained to you in light of your specific design, well, then it becomes very real, especially when it starts pointing out characteristics of your persona and your physical expression right down to the T. When it's so specific, it's freaky, right? So when you're getting knowledge like that, anything else it might have to say could have legs as well. And there is something, as I look into this knowledge, talking about this background frequency shifting, that change. It really does. Well, I'm seeing the evidence of it. We can see the structures falling. So let me begin to explain about what this background frequency is actually all about. You see, the construct of the cross of planning, we've been under the cross of planning since 1615. Since 1615, we've been under the cross of planning, and the cross of planning consists of 4 gates in the that correspond to specific hexagrams in the I Ching, and what are called gates in the body graph in human design. And so we're looking at this I Ching, but it's called the Rave I Ching, of what Ra kind of adjusted. It was all derived from the I Ching, but a little bit more nuanced, I do believe, from the original I Ching. A little bit more geared to where we are on our evolution. And if we look at these gates, and they've been given human or our cognitive kind of way of being expressed through language. I mean, how do you explain a codon in human language? Well, the Chinese managed to kind of do this, and then Ra extrapolated from there this rave I Ching. And the gate 37, the gate 40, the gate 9, and the gate 16 were the activations for what gave us the background frequency of the cross of planning. The background frequency being the very container in which we do everything. The very drone, as I was saying before, the very drone, that constant hum of energy that sets the whole tone for our entire experience, at least for the last 400 years. Now let's look at the gate 37 that was activated, the gate of friendship. The solar plexus center holds the gate 37. And what this energy represents, what this gate represents, is the energy of community. It's all about community and bonding, building alliances. It's about creating those emotional connections. The gate 37, the gate of friendship, is all about that. So it's all about bringing that community together. Well, if you look over the last 400 years, of course, we've been very communal in that sense. Let's look at the gate 40, and this is this gate sits in the heart center, and it is it's the gate on the other side of the gate 37 from solar plexus, and reaching over to the gate 40 in the heart, there's a channel created between those two, the channel of community. And the gate of 40 is the gate of aloneness. And this gate holds the energy of willpower and work and resources, bringing your energy and your will, meeting with the gate 37, bringing it where? To the community. You see, gate 40 is all about bringing your energy to the community. Well, if you think about it, that's what we've been doing under the cross of planning for the last 400 years. Infrastructure, politics, law, and all sorts of different working and home structures that bring the basic building blocks of the age of planning, the cross of planning. If we look at the gate 9, which is also activated at that time, was the gate of focus. This is in the sacral center, that generative energy, that energy for building, for creating. And of course, this is the generator's world. It has really been a generator's time since 1615. Even though the real differentiation of the generator wasn't more evident until 1781, when we had the projector come on the scene. And so this gate of focus, the sacral center, gate 9, and this is all about bringing your energy and focus on detailed work, on skills, on bringing that. And again, you think about, it's about the energy of building. It's that generative energy. And when we look in light of gate 37 and gate 40, what is that energy going into? It's going into the community. It's going into building this energy of the tribe, of the community, of working together. So therefore you have taxes so you can build roads and blah, 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 all of that sort of stuff. And this gate 9 reaches over to the gate 16 through what is, when they are joined, creates a channel of concentration. And the gate 16 is the gate of skills. Again, it's in the throat center. So this is around manifestation. And that the gate of skills, well, again, skills and focus. We're focusing our skills. We're bringing it to the community to build the friendship, through bringing our willpower for the greater good. We're all in this together, and all those catch phrases. That has been, you could say that was maybe the catchphrase for the last 400 years. The cross of planning has been, we're all in this together. Because that's why we have what we have, corporations and businesses and, specifications, specific work and certain skills. Everyone's specifying in a particular skill so that the whole can function together. It's a really interesting way in which the age of planning has shown itself. It really is. We have created a monster, right? That we can't back out of because we're so reliant on it. But what it is not, it's not really run by ourselves as such, but it is run by us. if you know what I mean there. You know, we are building this, we are creating this, we are doing this, but it's almost impossible to back out of it. And that is because it is the background frequency of the program that has caused this to happen. As I said before, we have the channel of community created through gates 37 and 40. And of course, there it is. There's that cross of planning where we have the community being the central point, the community. And this is what I'm beginning to move us towards. You know, what is this coming cosmic shift? That whole idea around community and bringing that focus and concentration to the community, you know, to the family, to the unit, to union, to relationships, to, you know, from sex to companionship to siblings and children and, you know, all of those things, the different forms and types of relationship are all part of that energy of the cross of planning. The tribe, the community, the greater good, morals are built, really, you know, are so strongly embedded into that cross of planning. This cross of planning we see falling apart right in front of our eyes. This cross of planning, because those that, all of us that have created it, those of us that are supporting it, are less and less supporting it now. We're not happy with those that are running the cross of planning infrastructure. We are not happy with it because really that is being corrupted so much. There are those that are really moving closer to where we're going into, which is the age of the individual, which is the cross of the sleeping phoenix. The cross of the sleeping phoenix is a deeply individual age. It is an age of great responsibility, great personal responsibility. Now, it's interesting because these politicians take no responsibility. They take nothing but the piss, to be honest, right? And everyone can see that now. And so many people are walking away from those infrastructures that were built around the time of those last 400 years, the cross of planning, this background frequency of the communal building, the generative energy that has built this world. But look what it's left us: discontent. It's left us with disappointment for the reflector. It's left us with frustration for the generator. It's left us with bitterness for the projector. It's left us with anger with the manifestor. You know, during this time of planning, we were never really given the heads up as we were moving through the cross of planning, as we were all being part of that community, building that, again, infrastructure, building that dynamic, building that synthesis. It's really what the cross planning was all about: synthesizing, everyone bringing their pieces to the table and synthesizing that so that we have this kind of inorganic merging, molding, evolving entity itself. Oh, to be honest, you know, the energies that are really controlling the the cross of planning is either those either the Wa or the Penta, and these are transauric forms. Transauric forms. So they are an aura, but they don't have a body. An aura that has mechanics, but in the way that the mechanics it has are leveraged, used, are gathered from others, from humans. These transauric forms use the gate activations in line with the vertical power column in the human design chart. There's 12 gates, specific gates, that the Penta loans off other people's, if they're activated in people's design. The penta uses those specific gates people have. So some people are penta people that where the penta uses them a lot within a group dynamic. That's what the penta does. This auric form actually takes control of individuals creating and forming a group. I'm digressing here because I don't really want to go into the penta right now. What I'm wanting to talk about is this coming cosmic shift, and I will return to the penta because what happens when this shift takes place and over the next millennia or so, the emergence of the rave come through, the new being is begin to be born and then really doesn't rise to its come into its own for, well, we can't really know when that would be because they're going to be so deeply vulnerable in the beginning, very deeply vulnerable as humans are coming out of, will basically be going through a hangover of the cross from the cross of planning. That's kind of being, in a way, what's going to happen to human beings, a Homo sapien intransitus, which is what we are. Intransitus being that we went through that mutation to 9 centers from 7 to 9 in 1781, going from 7 centered to 9 centered changed us completely, where that's where we really things really began to get berserk because we were no longer strategic beings. We were no longer needing to strategize as much with the 9 centers on board, but we never got the memo. We never got brought up to speed on this, not until 1987 when Ra got given this information, this knowledge. We didn't get the memo that this change had taken place, that we didn't need to try and survive anymore. We didn't need to. No, and we were still trying to act and live our lives as a strategic 7-centered being, not leveraging off or taking advantage of our 9 centers. However, it still was taking time for the 9 centers to emerge, because they were being born from 7-centered beings, just as much as the raves will be born from humans, from Homo sapien intransitus. But they won't be Homo sapien intransitus, they'll be raves. Just as much as we are so different from Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal. But they are our predecessors. They are our ancestors. We did come from them. But what happened is at particular times, like when a mutation took place, again, movement in the cosmos caused a mutation for the larynx to drop. And here was Cro-Magnon all of a sudden beginning to communicate using the voice box. The eyes also shifting from the side of the head to the front, and us no longer seeing two-dimensionally, but now perceiving depth and actually perceiving a 3D reality. You see, the shift is biological. It is biological. And that's why the first video I was talking about, we must understand where we've come from. We come from the environment, and the environment is biological, but we ourselves are not atomic. We're not atomic. This consciousness, awareness, the awareness consciousness, the witness consciousness, this thing that seems to be sitting behind the eyes, experiencing this now moment, that there is truly you. And yet it is having a human experience, this atomic experience, this physical experience. And this physical atomic being, this biological structure, also has its own consciousness. It wants to live its own life. As a 7-centered being, the body was not as evolved to have its own authority. Authority was something outside of itself. The being, therefore, needed to be very strategic in knowing how to survive in that kind of world where the authority was outside of you. Outside of you. Ever since 1681, we became 9-centered. We know we went from being strategic, more left-orientated, to more right-orientated, and more receptive, and far less strategic, more passive and receptive. And what does that mean? Well, then we no longer needed to try and survive, and yet we're still under that propaganda, many of us believing that we've got to try and survive. We're still under that cross of planning that insists that we are here to survive. That survival mindset. But after 2027, February 18, when that cosmic shift takes place, when Pluto enters back into the gate 41, back into that starting codon, and we have a shift in the clock from the cross of planning into a new age, 400-year cycle of the cross of the sleeping phoenix. I will go into another video on this one. The cross of the sleeping phoenix is another whole video in itself. That is the shift that is going to take place. To give you a heads up, the cross of the sleeping phoenix is nothing like the cross of planning. That background frequency that we've been experiencing of bringing our gifts and talents for the tribe, for the community, giving up ourselves for the greater community and tribe. You know, putting our authority, our choice making, our decision making outside of ourselves. That was the cross of planning. That age is coming to an end. That age is coming to an end, and it will never come back. It's done. And there are so many things that we are very, very unaware of. What does that mean when all of that infrastructure begins to fall away? What does it mean to have your own authority within yourself? What does it mean to have beings that are born that when you mention politician, they would look at you like you had a hole in your head? If you were to mention, anything to do with strategizing, they would think there was something very, very peculiar about you. The old strategic, active, aggressive, dominating attitude would just simply be gone. That background frequency, that need to survive, that need to dominate will be gone. That energy won't be there in the background. It's not coming back. What does it mean to be living under the cross of the sleeping phoenix? Well, for one, we have a mutation that takes place in the solar plexus, meaning that the solar plexus is no longer, it will no longer have its motor function, which is where the emotions come from. We as human beings call emotions. It is the motor function of the solar plexus that gives the emotions its wave form. Emotions go up and they go down, and we feel that deeply. That's one of the things that really defines us as Homo sapiens. It's really what defines us as human, are our emotions. And when that shift takes place, when that starting codon is triggered off by Pluto entering back into the gate 41, when that mutation fully comes to its full realization and the gate 49 and gate 19 channel is cut for good, then that need to bring your gifts and talents, your taxes, your energy for the tribe, for the community, that urge won't be there. It won't be there. Not the way it's been. That's the background frequency, is that it's like an urge, it's a preclusion to do so. I mean, what is it that says we had to build this grand generator? Thank you, generators, for building, but the way that our world is with its strategic planning, very dominating attitude. Where did that come from? Where is the law of that? Well, it's in the background frequency, which is that cross of planning. 400 years we've been in that frequency. What we're about to experience is unlike anything our grandparents haven't experienced, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, and so forth. 400 years we're talking since something like this has happened, since a evolutionary DNA shift has taken place where we're going to feel it, we're going to notice it. Oh, we're going to notice it. Us Homo sapiens, we might feel it quite a bit. We don't know. No one can know. Ra, who was given this, he didn't know. How could he? We don't know until we experience it. But what we do know is that it's not going to be this. It's not going to be like this. It's not going to be the way things were. The need to strategize will be far less. Those that will, they won't need to survive. It's going to be such a different age. Even the idea of surviving. For a rave, they're not going to be concerned about trying to survive. They are penta beings, conscious penta beings. They connect into that transauric form I was talking about before. They connect into it consciously. We have no conscious connection to the penta. And the penta is a transauric form that controls groups, families. Anytime you've got a group of 3 people, between 3 and 5, you have a penta. The penta, the transauric form, it's an aura that controls the group. It's what's in control. We don't have conscious access to that. The raves that are begin to be born after 2027, well, they have access to it. They will actually give up. I was going to say gladly, but they're not emotive. You think about that. They don't have emotions. That's a big piece of what's going away. We're the last of the Homo sapiens. 2 more years of Homo sapiens being born. Not long, and then new forms are being born, like really original ones like us. And what is it that defines us? The emotional wave, that the human beings, emotional beings, that's not going to be there. That mutation takes place in the solar plexus, the motor is turned off, and the solar plexus becomes a completely aware center, a complete awareness center, just like the spleen. The spleen is the oldest awareness center. Cro-Magnon had that, or just all the original hominids had the spleen center was the awareness center. The original beings, their spleen would tell them if a food was poisonous or not. They were extremely right as well. So they were really connected to the environment. So I said in the first video, you have to go onto YouTube to watch the first one. This one will be on YouTube as well. Just I'll go live on Facebook. But that is the Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, they were all right-minded, which means very receptive, but they were receptive of the environment, and their spleen, how'd they survive? It was their spleen that would, their sense of taste, their smell, it would give them the information as to whether something was poisonous or not. So they had a deep connection to nature, an incredibly deep awareness, very different from us, very different from us. Just like the raves are going to have a completely different awareness from what we have now. Our awareness of emotions really define us as human beings, but the raves won't have that. They'll have a purely spiritual solar plexus. So the emotional wave will be gone. Think about that. Think about beings that are just spiritual, but not emotional. Think about that. Beings that are spiritual, but not emotional. I mean, like, we can all feel this change on the horizon. There's shifts taking place. We can feel it. I can tell you it's not what we think it's going to be. It's not what we think it's going to be. I'm not hearing anyone talking about this change. Well, some, but very few. It's not common conversation. We only got, just over 2 years to go here before we experience one of the biggest background frequency shifts in 400 years. We've got no one to ask, what is it like when that shift takes place? When you go back to 1615, when the cross of planning came in, Great Britain, or whatever we want to call it, Europe was just coming back from the plague. The plague. And then what happened? Then they started building infrastructure. A sewage system. They started, more the cross of planning. There it is. We can have a better life. In that 400 years, that's been a real experience for human beings, right? Very, very cool. A very interesting time. But Homo sapiens have had their time. We've had our time, but this is, Still we are here. And what does that mean for us now? Us that are Homo sapien and transitus, us that will feel the shift, but we ourselves are not going to change. We'll remain, but the whole world that we enter into will change. The whole background frequency will be different. As Ra said, this information was given for now, for those that are going to need to live, for us humans. Human design was given to humans so they know how to live in their age after 2027. So they know how to live in the age of the sleeping phoenix. So we know how to be, because we're truly meant to be our own authority. That is the shift. That is the shift, and that can happen now. The coming cosmic shift takes place in you, and that's when you start to live as yourself. That's when you remove yourself from the homogenized mind. You stop acting like everyone else, trying to be like everyone else, taking your education, your food, your sleep, your environment, everything, your motivation like everyone else. It's when you stop that. It's when you put all of that aside and you truly live your life as yourself. You follow your own strategy, your own authority, and it's built into your DNA. It's nothing you have to think about doing. It's something that you surrender to. You surrender to yourself, your true self. And that's the beauty of the coming cosmic shift. And I guess there'll be a part 3 as we go into talking about the age of the sleeping phoenix. Once we leave that age, the cross of planning, it's served us well. The cross of planning has served us well. Look at it right now. I mean, it's really having its last hurrah with your Elon Musks and your Donald Trumps and your you just your Joe Rogans and your on and on and on. You know, all the all the actors in this life, all of that, the movies, the songs, all of those things, all part of the cross of planning. It's about to go away. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's don't take my word for it. This information is you know, it's not for you to believe. It's for you to go and find out for yourself. And there's one thing, this is human design knowledge, information. This information was given to Ra Uru Hu, who was given the human design uh, science of differentiation, and it has proven to be very, very uh, robust and very specific and precise in its information and what it can show you. And so the only reason I look at these other aspects, more mystical side of what the future may hold, is this comes from a system that is deeply scientific and very evident, self-evident in itself, especially when you have your own reading done. So if you ever need to get a reading done, be sure to do it. Put it on your bucket list. Get a reading done at some point in your life, because the shift is coming. And I do believe it's well worth being prepared when it comes to the shift. So until next time, bye for now.